What's up, Sales RXers? Look, with outbound conversion rate benchmarks being as low as 3%, it's no secret that it's really tough right now for a lot of sellers. And if you're an individual contributor or a senior leader in marketing, RevOps, sales, any role that has a revenue related metric that you have to attain, it's time to find a better pipeline channel. So, what's better than selling to someone who doesn't know you or your product? Selling to someone who does. This is where Champify comes in. Champify monitors key contacts at accounts like champions, post-sale sponsors, admins, heavy users, and they enrich that data to detect job changes, determine relevancy for outreach, and then assigns and alerts reps with those newly assigned leads. So if you haven't tried out Champify yet, you need to give it a shot. Stop spinning your wheels with outbound heavy sales motions and start selling to people you've already sold to. You can click the link below in the show description for an extended proof of concept and free data test from the team at Champify. What you'll do is click podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Let them know that the Sales RX podcast sent you so they know who to give the VIP treatment to. Now let's jump into today's episode. I'm pretty excited to have you here. I know we've had some scheduling troubles, but we made it happen. We're here, and it's okay because the podcast got delayed by a month anyway. So I know that we were talking a little bit before the show and a little bit in coming weeks leading up to the podcast, and you have this really big passion for using strategy in your cold outreach, which I think is a really good thing to be focused on. I think at a high level, everybody in a perfect world would love to be more strategic, but it's really hard. It's really hard to map out how that strategy looks. I think too many times people say, oh, let's be strategic. And it's like, just do more due diligence or use more common sense when prospecting, right? And I don't really think that's strategy. I think strategy is, hey, I do this because then this is what I'm trying to get to. And that to me is strategy. It's not just, oh, I'm going to put them in a better sequence because they're a VP of sales instead of sales director, where they might actually just be an elevated AE. Okay, that's not strategy. That's just due diligence and common sense. Strategy is, hey, I do this part in my sales process on the outreach because I'm expecting this to happen, or I'm warming this part of the sequence up, or I'm setting them up for this thing that I'm going to do later. It's kind of like, it makes me think of South Park when Trey Parker's talking about how to write. He's like, if your beats go and then, you're screwed. It should always be therefore or but in between your story beats. And I feel the same way about strategy. So you're half man, half meme. Let's talk a little bit about that. You use memes in your outreach, but let's talk about some of your strategic cold outreach methods and what you're doing to be able to get, your prospects to move to the next step in a world where they're getting inundated with emails and cold calls every single day.
Yeah. Well, firstly, again, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. And really, you set me up great by saying, in a world where our prospects, right, everyone, even myself, is inundated with cold emails, cold calls, LinkedIn DMs, and I'm not a bigwig, right? So I can only imagine the more senior someone gets, the more outreach they're getting. As a result, the importance of doing something that is creative and strategic becomes more important because you need to do something that stands out. And I'll jump more into that, but I'm just going to put a pin in that briefly to talk a little bit about half man, half meme, which you called out. Yes, on LinkedIn, I love creating some goofy memes and goofy content, kind of hopefully to bring some humor and levity to salespeople's day and even my prospects. I will call out, I benefit from the fact that I sell to salespeople. So my content, given that I basically make content that I think is funny and I hope other people think is funny. It does have an inherent relatability to my prospecting audience. Now, I want to call that out because depending on if I worked for a different company where I was trying to reach out to maybe VPs of engineering, things like that, I wouldn't have that benefit. So I do want to call that out. I definitely, I have that as something that I'm aware of, but I also double down on it because it means that I can continue to create content that I enjoy that will hopefully be relatable to, just people in my network, but also my prospects. I will say, I think in sales, going back like a year ago, I really wasn't posting on LinkedIn. I'd never really been big on like social media at all. I had accounts, but had been, I don't know what the technical term is, but I felt kind of like a lurker, right? Like I had Instagram, I had Facebook, like back when it was like cool. And even Snapchat and LinkedIn, but I didn't really post. For some people, I'd like message back and forth with friends. Long story short, I had always enjoyed making jokes and especially poking fun at myself. I love making jokes where I'm the butt of the joke. I don't know why. It just is like something I've loved doing since I was a kid. And to make a long story short, about a year ago, I was talking with a career coach, or like a more like a mentor, and I was talking about things that I enjoyed and what I wanted to, some of the things that I wanted to grow into in my career. And they told me something which will stick to me, probably, or stick with me probably till the day I die. I had mentioned some of my enjoyment around like being goofy and making jokes, and they said, Caspian, I think you know what you want to do. I think you've been too scared to pursue it. And that really resonated with me. Number one, because it's rare that people are so blunt with you nowadays, but it was really refreshing, right? I miss that. With close friends, family, people can speak to you honestly, but I think sometimes people are worried about offending you or hurting your feelings, which is valid, right? But it was very refreshing to have someone say this to me. And as a result, I knew like, hey, I want to show bit more of my personality, not only in my LinkedIn brand, but also in my outreach, in my day-to-day job. I, for a long time, had felt that in my professional career, I needed to be very buttoned up, figuratively and literally, right? Like always wearing a collared shirt, things like that. And of course, professionalism is still important, but it doesn't mean that that comes at the cost of your personality. So
Mhm.
as a result, I began embracing that more in my outreach as well as in the content I created on LinkedIn. And that's where I began to understand, oh, I can use this to my advantage. So going back to like, hey, what does strategy mean? Because 1,000 people might talk about that in 1,000 different ways. To me, it really means three things, and I'll dig into these. It means creativity. Again, I'll dig into this, humor, and strong research, right? Creativity to me, again, can be defined different ways. I try to lead with my most creative touch first when I'm reaching out to someone. Now, this might be a little bit of like a polarizing point. I know some people love gifts, some people hate gifts. I try to send a thoughtful, not like a mass Bose headphones. Not that there's anything wrong with Bose headphones, but I don't send like Bose headphones to all VPs of sales in my book. I will do research and I will normally send a book to someone that I am trying to prospect, right? So if I saw that you really love dolphins, I would send you a book about dolphins. And I'd say, like, hey, Chet, notice you love dolphins, thought you'd enjoy this book. And then you'd be surprised at the metaphors you can make, right? Like dolphins is just like your customer facing interactions. You need to surface the appropriate insights. I'm making a stretch there, but it's that creativity, right? Like it's you as an SDR or whatever sales role you're in constant competition with other people, other SDRs, other salespeople for your prospect's attention. So that initial creativity is the goal is just to get your prospect's attention. How are you going to keep it? Well, that to me is where you can bring in humor slash what I'll call like personality more generally and strong research. Humor is more, sequences. You don't always have success on your first touch, right? Like let's say you send a gift, you send an email that hopefully is thoughtful and well researched, but it doesn't mean that they'll respond right away. So how are you going to keep your prospect's attention? Well, that's where I think again professionalism is important, but having unique bubble up touches. I think so many people have as like a second email thoughts, and you'd be surprised some of the unique ways that you can make those things more interesting, especially because a lot of people that have been prospected can see right through those more generic like bubble up touches. So whether it's as simple as like creating a GIF of yourself and like pointing upwards and being like, hey, any thoughts on my note up there? It's just a small way for you to continue to show that you're taking time to be unique and hopefully bring some levity to their day. But arguably more important than just like the levity is the third point, which is well researched or is good research. I think a lot of people don't have a great reason for reaching out to their prospects. They're just reaching out because they're someone in their book. I personally don't like saying like, hey, I'm the SDR aligned to da, 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 da. That's not the, like, I don't like that because my question to myself is like, why would they care? Why does it matter? Like if I'm the SDR aligned to their account, it doesn't. So I'm reaching out to you because I noticed your sales team is growing by like 35%. And as VP of sales, I'm sure, ramping those new reps as quickly as possible is top of mind. That's pretty generic, but that is a reason. That's a legitimate reason why you're reaching out if your product or service is around sales onboarding, right? So that's where I think being able to capture your prospect's attention with creativity, keep it with strong, humor or personality, and then and also good research will make you more effective in your outreach overall. So I way over answered your initial question, but that's a bit of context into how I got into creating memes, goofy things like that, and what strategy means to me. But happy to dig in deeper if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. And the call out on strategy is interesting because I've always been a fan of, especially if you're cold calling. And again, you called something out very important. I sell to salespeople. So
Yeah,
take this as it may, maybe, selling to, engineering individuals is probably not as, you're not going to get the same kind of response. But I've always said, don't go down a rabbit hole of research because
yeah,
it's not going to matter when your prospect says not interested if you know all
yeah,
about this and that and the other. But there is value to doing some research. And
yeah,
the example I give is the amount of outreach I got as a head of global sales development at Jelly Smack. It's like if you're selling an AI sales tool,
yeah,
you look at our page, we sell to content creators. It's not
yeah,
a traditional B2B sale. You could
yep,
almost envision yourself and go, this is probably more like a D2C sale because they're not actually talking to a business, they're
yeah,
talking to a person. Kind of
yeah,
like Pavilion when we were doing individual memberships as opposed to like Teams memberships or the group
yeah,
contracts. The individual membership, it was like a D2C sale. So we had to approach it that way as
yeah,
salespeople. We're selling memberships, individual memberships to people. And then, you know, when we do the group ones, it's like a group deal because you get a better price per membership. I really told everybody
yeah,
it's like if you worked at 24-hour fitness, but it's professional development
yep,
for your career. And it was interesting how many people would just flood my inbox just because I had the title that
yep,
resonated with who they sell to, but my company might have not fit, or maybe there was a way my company fit, but they weren't really thinking about it because they didn't even take a second to look at that page and go, oh, it's probably more of like consumer sale because they're selling to an individual as opposed to selling
yeah,
to a business. And like to even that point, that would have helped so many other companies either decide this is not worth my time or hey, it is worth my time because I can transform their process in this way. But again,
yeah,
that's on sales leaders that put too much pressure on people just to hit activity metrics.
yeah,
So they just throw anybody with a title.
yep,
We just go on LinkedIn, anything that's computer software, internet publishing, information technology, and people with the right titles, we just slam them in a sequence.
yep,
Um, let's dig into humor a little bit.
yeah,
Um, I want to hear what are some of the craziest, most humorous things that you've sent that you've gotten a response from. Let's talk about what's the limit that you've taken it to, just to give an example,
yeah,
because I think it is important. There is a line of professionalism that you have to be careful with. Sometimes I think
yeah,
salespeople, though, were pretty open to almost anything to the
yeah,
point where somebody ghosted you, you could send the picture of Will Smith standing in the house in Bel Air alone and being like, what did I do wrong? But that might not work everywhere, but like,
yeah,
what's one that you can recall where you kind of pushed it to the limit and you were like, I'm really going out there with the humor, and then it worked and you're
yep.
like, holy shit, that actually worked.
Yeah, so there's two examples that come to mind. One was related to a gift that was like kind of bold, but like pretty goofy. And then one was related to a personalized wrap that I actually did for someone. So the gift one, there was this prospect that I was looking at, and I could tell from his LinkedIn that he was really big on golf. And now now I'd probably send him like a golf book, something like that. But at the time, I saw that there was an option. Like I saw this thing that I could send customized golf balls, and you could put whatever picture you wanted. So I was feeling a little bit bold, and in retrospect, it's like maybe a little bit weird. But long story short, I I went up screenshotting his picture on LinkedIn and put his picture on golf balls. So he basically had like golf balls with his face on them, and sent them to him because again, like I was like, oh, open to taking a swing on like my company stuff like that,
Mhm.
and it was so funny. Initially, I got no response, and I was like, oh damn, I definitely like burned this account. I definitely burned this guy because he wasn't responding to my emails. And then I got him on a call, and it was so funny because I introduced myself and I was like, hey, Caspian, sent you the golf balls with your face on them, and he paused. And then he was like, I still remember his response. He was like, Caspian, for your persistence, I give you an A. For your creativity, I give you an A. And for me not responding earlier, I give myself an F. And I was like, as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, I'm getting this meeting for sure. So that was definitely a little bit bold. And again, I pushed the envelope, especially with gifts. Like, yeah, some people don't like them, and that's fair. Like, I can respect that. I think also people think I do a lot of sleuthing. I'm like, oh, like, how do you get addresses, things like that. It's a lot easier than you'd think. So I'm not. Can all that stuff can be all that personalization can be done pretty quickly. But that was pretty funny from like a gift perspective. in terms of another approach, I've made like general goofy, like sales, like comedy rap. I have a song about like being ghosted, and I made this like goofy video for it. And so there's a prospect who I had who liked the song, and then he wound up like basically ghosting me. I was like, dude, you can't like a song about being ghosted and then ghost me. But I knew that he kind of like enjoyed the like the whole theme of it. So I made him a personalized rap. It's like pretty quick. It was like under a minute, and it wound up working because I was basically like, hey, is there any amount of rapping I can do to get time back with you? And I would not say that I'm a very good rapper, but again, it's just another way that I can, whether it's memes, whether it's like songs, whether it's a straight up joke, like any way that I can kind of poke fun at myself and bring a bit of humor. It's just another method that I can do. So all of that to be said, he was like, hey, yeah, I'm free right now. Like, let's hop on a call. And you just never know. Like, that's where, again, and I talk about this with my SDR friends. I think so often we talk ourselves out of some like off the wall ideas. And is it helpful to like check yourself sometimes? Sure. But I figure like, we're in sales. You might as well try it. If it doesn't work, for the future, right? Like I'm trying to think of maybe like some of the weirdest thing I've done. Like I once sent a gift to someone who I now know, like I once sent a gift to someone who I now know like should have never gotten a gift, but I learned from that. I'm like, okay, I know this type of person in the future, like no chance. Like this was super off-putting to them, and it's makes sense. But you don't know till you try. So I'm huge on that. And again, yeah, like whether it's goofy videos or gifts or I also sent this one person like a mug because she liked community, and I wrote this whole like email about how the mug was like their customer facing interactions, and there was like no visibility with with the mug. And then it turns out that her husband had been on community, so like she absolutely loved it. And again, I think any chance that you can do something a bit unique, and like, yeah, I think people appreciate people going the extra mile, especially if you are selling to salespeople, because they remember when they were on the flip side trying to do outreach. So I over answered again, but that's what I would say is I love stuff like that.
No, it's great, and I think you gave me some ideas because I'm sure some people are pretty fed up with my outreach on the sales doctor. So I'm going to start putting my face on golf balls,
There we go.
and I'm going to send it to them, and I'm going to say,
Yep.
here you go, so you can just take it all out on me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I know you're fed up with my outreach. Here's a couple golf balls. Go smack the shit out of my face.
Exactly.
I'll let you.
But you're
I'll
poking
let
fun
you.
at yourself, right? It's like it's good.
Yeah.
It's good because I think that in retrospect, I should have put my face on golf balls, not his. I don't know why you'd want to hit golf balls with your face on them, but like, I think again, it's like there's the relatability factor of like I don't know how to put it. I think that people in general appreciate some self-deprecation to an extent, right? You got to be mindful of it, but I think that's such a good point, man. I should have been harder to get. I could have gotten some golf balls.
Have you ever read the book How to Get a Meeting with Anyone by Stu Heinecke? It's kind of I read it a long time ago, and it's kind of I think people, especially in the SaaS space, started reading it way back in the day, and that's kind of spurred the whole gifting thing. Because this guy is a cartoonist, and he used to want to get meetings with big people. So what he'd do is he'd draw a self-portrait of him. He had this whole method of how he reached out to gatekeepers and got information, was able to get these gifts in the hands of like Fortune 500 executives he wanted to have meetings with. Wow. But his whole thing was he would draw a self-portrait of someone or like a cartoon, right? And he wrote this whole book and all this other stuff, but it's a great book. If you never read it, it's kind of cool. It's kind of follows along the similar lines of what we do with gifting is like, finding something personable or something that would matter to them. I guess his thing was easier because it was just one standard, hey, I just take their picture and I draw something, a caricature or whatever. So it's the same thing every day. And he just created it. Us, we have to be a little bit more investigative because can't send golf balls to everybody. Not everybody golfs, right? And not everybody golfs as much as they probably wish they should. Caspian, in closing,
yes.
What's something that we should talk about, or a question that I haven't asked you yet that you wish I would have that you could talk about?
Ooh, great question. What's something that I would say? I'll talk about some undervalued characteristics. I'll generally speak. I think it's a good way to like wrap up. Undervalued characteristics of SDRs. When you ask someone like what makes a successful SDR, what makes a successful salesperson, right? SDR, BDR, ADR all means the same thing. anything you can put cold in front of they're doing, cold calling, cold emailing, cold LinkedIn. When you ask people what makes a salesperson successful, they'll talk about grit, they'll talk about persistence. 100%. I think that that's true. I do think, though, that thinking outside, like, not to be cheesy, but thinking outside the box and being willing to try things that others aren't, I think is an undervalued skill. Because I think, as you called out in the beginning, especially in a post-COVID world, people aren't in the office, so it's tough to call. You don't really know if their work phone's gonna be working, so you're limited to cell phone, maybe their email, maybe LinkedIn, and then what else, right? And the people that are willing to try the things that fall into that what else category, or do the fundamentals but in a unique way, I think is undervalued, and I think is going to continue to become more and more important as the years go on. Like, what makes an SDR successful now isn't, there's some overlap, but not 100% the same as 10 years ago, and likely will not be the same as 10 years from now. So I think as we move further into like the 2020s, being willing to do what others aren't, and think creatively and think outside the box, I think is going to become more and more important. And that's something that I aspire to be like, but there are people who do it way better than I do. And I'm just grateful to work at a company where I'm able to learn from the best. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite quotes of all time is from Jerry Rice, the famous 49ers receiver. Of course, he played for other teams, but the 49ers, his claim to fame was. And it was, I'm going to do what others won't so I can do what others can't.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think about that all the time because it is tough. And yeah, we talk about grit and perseverance all the time, but I've always encouraged people, it's really about discipline. Yeah. That's why athletes and vets typically make really, really, really good salespeople, is because they're very disciplined in their routine. They go to the gym every day, or they're, they're making their bed and doing their 5-mile jog with, what do they call it? Rec, or whatever they do in the military, where they get out and they go run 5 miles or jog 5 miles, and they're singing and stomping their boots and stuff. It's no easy feat. Like, they're the most disciplined people on the planet, in some regards. And that's what it's about, because, like, hey man, you probably don't feel like making cold calls every day or doing that level of research you do, but you have to. It's a thing that you have to do. You have to do it, because others can't do it or won't do it. And then you get to do the things that they can't do, like going to Tahoe and having a blast. And it's a good thing not to have good internet sometimes, man. That means you're getting the solidarity that you need. You're getting that alone time. Caspian, let everybody know if they want to interact with you. What's the best way to get in touch with you and check you out?
Yeah, best way to get in touch, though I aspire to be more active on different social platforms, LinkedIn is still my number one. So if you look up my first name, Caspian, that's Caspian, last name Lewke, Lewke. You'll see the tagline, half man, half meme. Go ahead and connect with me, follow me, shoot me a DM. I'm pretty quick on DMs, hopefully. So would love to get to know anyone who's listening and wants to connect.
It's fantastic. Caspian, it's been a great episode. Thank you to everyone who tuned in this week. As you know, we go live every week with new episodes from the Sales RX podcast. If you are interested in connecting with the Sales RX community or myself and the Sales Doctor further, we'll have links to everything you would need for our resources in the show notes below, as well as a link to Caspian's LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Don't forget to check us out at www.thesalesdocrx.com for any free resources, episodes of the other podcasts, copies to our newsletter, as well as all the things that you would need to enable yourself as an SDR, an AE, or a frontline manager, even a marketer looking to create content as we branch off our sales media arm of the business. Thank you again, everybody, for listening today. Thank you, Caspian, for your time, and we'll catch everybody on the next one. See ya.
Thanks so much, Chet. See ya.